Originally, it was a Confucian idea that men are superior and women inferior. This idea has a very long history in Japan. This is the husband. This is the wife. And here are the children. This was the family structure before the war. A triangle. There was no equality between husband and wife. She had the same status as the children. The family system was a patriarchy. A large family lived under the authority of one man. He dominated the family members, deciding whom they should marry and where they should live and work. Women had 3 great duties in life. In youth, obedience to the father. In marriage, obedience to the husband. And in old age, obedience to the sons. It was an age of male supremacy. It was the war that broke the old system. There was a severe labor shortage because all the men were taken away into the army. So we women had to learn how to do the man's work. We did many things we had never done before, and by the end of the war, we had learned many skills and gained a lot of confidence in ourselves. We realized we could do just about anything if we set our minds to it.
August 1945. Douglas MacArthur brings with him a grand design for turning post-war Japan into an American-style democracy. Western ideals of liberty, equality, and the dignity of the individual are to be introduced for the first time in Japan's 2,000-year history. MacArthur sets up his headquarters right next to the Emperor's Palace in downtown Tokyo and issues a stream of decrees for the wholesale restructuring of Japanese society.
We knew nothing about democracy, and yet we felt this tremendous sense of liberation. As if a huge weight had suddenly been lifted off our shoulders. It was exhilarating. We felt like caged birds suddenly released to fly freely wherever we wanted. We dashed off into the streets trying to do 100 things at once, to improve our working conditions, to get all the women out to vote. We dashed around doing all kinds of things. We didn't know what we were doing half the time, but we were unbelievably happy.
Democratic elections are held 8 months after MacArthur arrives. Women are voting for the first time, and they turn out in unexpected numbers. When the new parliament convenes, 39 of the seats are filled by women. The new constitution is called a gift from General MacArthur. In one stroke, it smashes the feudal system that has made women subservient to men for centuries. The Constitution gives women legal equality in marriage, family life, and divorce, the right to an equal education. The all-male universities are opened up, and women are now free to compete as equals in the workplace.
Until the end of the war, women were considered unclean and offensive to the Shinto gods. We were not allowed to carry the festival shrines, and we couldn't enter sacred Shinto places. Even some mountains were taboo. It wasn't until after the war that we were allowed to climb a sacred mountain like Fuji. But then women started doing all these things. The new democracy broke the power of the old taboos. General MacArthur issued all kinds of directives and instructions on how to make Japanese society more democratic and how to organize women. I remember in my own neighborhood, regular weekly meetings of women were organized to discuss what democracy was all about. And at the end of each meeting, everyone got one bottle of this strange saffron-like drink, which of course was Coca-Cola. After that, we really started to like its special flavor.
It was a benign occupation that somehow worked a marriage between American democracy and Japanese tradition. And when it ended, Japan was poised for its emergence as one of the great industrial nations of the world.
Today, we mothers are changing society with our determination and willpower. We must struggle to win real equality for the working woman. We must fight for equal status and equal salary with men in the workplace.
Much of General MacArthur's grand design has survived in modern Japan. The Constitution, the system of laws, the liberation of women. And Japan has grown into a dynamic and successful democracy. Yet in many ways, it is not a Western-style democracy. The freedoms and rights of the individual as we see them in the West have been redefined and absorbed into the mainstream of Japanese culture. The family, rather than the individual, remains the basic unit of Japanese society. Most parents still bring their children up in the traditional way. Boys are raised to be otokarashi, or manly. They can be louder and more aggressive than girls. Boys learn to speak the rougher man's language, and they're encouraged to play the leadership roles. The masculine ideal is still the samurai. The feminine ideal is the nurturing mother. Girls are raised to be gentle and more sensitive than boys. They learn to speak the softer woman's language. And if a girl is overly rough or assertive, she is told to be more onarashi, or womanly. A man should be strong in every way, physically strong and mentally strong. And the man should keep the important goals in mind, not bother himself with small details.
I think to be feminine means to be gentle and to have a warm heart.
Nearly all girls now complete high school, and half of them go on to get a higher education. But few Japanese women go to the four-year universities. Most attend a two-year college for women where the most popular courses are liberal arts and home economics.
There are many different ways for a woman to think about her life. Some want to make marriage and home the center of their lives, and some want to make the workplace the center of their lives. But most Japanese companies have only one way to think about women. They expect us to work for only 2 or 3 years and then leave to get married. Then later they expect us to return to work as middle-aged part-timers. Women who don't fit into this traditional pattern are just ignored. They can't find a job. The companies simply won't hire them. Even top university graduates cannot find a career job because the large corporations won't hire women from universities. The company job listings simply say, males only.
The companies believe that only men can be relied on to be loyal to the company for a lifetime. New employees train, work, and play in all-male groups. The samurai-like tradition of male camaraderie that develops over the years is the cutting edge of company culture in Japan. A few companies in the retail and service industries have successfully developed company cultures based on women employees. Here, female managers supervise all female groups. Company cultures based on the sexes competing as equals have not been successfully developed in Japan. Despite labor laws that require equal pay for equal work, the average wage for women is only about half that for men. Japanese industry employs women on a low-cost, temporary basis to do the jobs that don't require much training or experience.
Using women for short periods at low salaries is the policy of most Japanese companies. I think the Japanese government actually promotes this system with its labor and overall policies. When a woman reaches her mid-20s, then the issue of marriage becomes urgent. If she has not found someone herself, her family often takes over and tries to arrange a marriage. Many photographs and personal histories are exchanged. When a good match is found, an introduction is set up. This can be a blind date or an informal meeting in a coffee shop. But the formal way is to arrange a luncheon at a Japanese restaurant. I don't think there is a big difference between a love marriage and an arranged marriage. When you meet a man in the formally arranged way, there is no obligation to say yes. If you don't like him, you can always say no and just refuse to see him again. In the old days, a young couple didn't have much choice when a marriage was arranged for them. The parents and relatives put on a lot of pressure. Now it's just a formal method of introduction.
Marriage in Japan is not only a personal affair between two individuals, it's a coming together of two families. Our daughter is leaving our family and entering yours. When she dies, she will be placed in your family grave. Her ashes will become a part of your earth. She has to prepare her heart and become a proud member of your family. This is the way a wife follows her husband.
The wife is the main structure, or the foundation, on which the family is built. And the husband and children are like the fixtures or the furniture. If the wife does not take full charge of the family and hold it together, then the whole thing will collapse. Strong individualism is a much admired virtue in the West, and it's a normal part of Western women's consciousness. To live only for husband and children is not enough. Western women feel they must fulfill themselves as individuals. But in Japan, people who think like that are rejected for being too selfish. In Japan, we admire people who sacrifice themselves. For example, in the business world, it is taken for granted that a man will sacrifice himself for the success of his company. And in the home, it is taken for granted that the wife will devote herself to husband and children. I think there is something right and natural about a mother staying at home to bring up her children, at least until they go to primary school. I feel very sorry for children whose parents are away from home. Children like that seem to grow up always hungry for more love. Japanese mothers tend to live through their children, finding fulfillment through the success of their children. Many mothers have a long-term education strategy worked out, a 20-year plan that starts before kindergarten and takes their child right through to university. The Japanese housewife holds a lot of power, far more, I think, than women in most other countries. The typical Japanese husband hands over his entire paycheck without even opening it, and the wife controls not just the household expenses, but all the financial affairs of the family. The bond of love and dependence between mother and child is the prototype for all human relations in Japan. It's the glue that holds our society together. The children are gone. The husband is reaching the peak of his career and comes home late almost every night. The midlife crisis can be very severe for a woman who has been the traditional good wife and wise mother. She takes up hobbies, goes to culture centers, tries to get a job. Anything to get out of the empty house. There is not much hope of going back to work and building a new career. The long gap in her employment record works against her, and companies have age limits on hiring. Unless she is very lucky, the best she can hope for is part-time work. They are hired when the companies need them and fired when the need is gone. They are a very convenient source of cheap labor for Japanese industry. You hear a lot about the spectacular success of post-war Japanese industry, but nothing is said about the contributions made by millions of women who work for low wages. Before the war, a typical Japanese woman gave birth to 5 children, raised them, and lived to the age of 50 or 60, surrounded by the warmth of the whole extended family. A woman today lives to be 80 years old and has only 2 children. When the children marry, they leave to set up their own nuclear families. Many Japanese women, who have devoted themselves to husband and children in the traditional way, now face a frightening blank for the remaining 20 or 30 years of their lives. We all know the way Japanese men think about women. It hasn't changed much since the old days. A woman should be sweet and gentle. She shouldn't speak too much in front of other people. She should walk humbly 3 steps behind. Japanese men like women who agree with them. If you say, "No, I don't agree," and suggest your own idea, Japanese men feel offended. They think you're being rude. Drinking sake with a man as an equal is still completely out of the question. But I do all these things.
Women have grown really strong, haven't they, since the war? Now, how much farther are they going to go? For a while back in the early 70s, we really went all out copying the style of the American women's lib movement, right down to the radical gestures, wearing no bras and so on. That style grew naturally out of the American culture, and I think it worked well there. But in Japan, we realized that we would not be able to change the attitudes of people or win their sympathy in this way. We had to find a less provocative style, appropriate to our own culture. On top, there is the state. One level below the state is Japanese industry and the business companies.
And below that, at the bottom, we have all the family units. According to this way of thinking, the individual simply does not exist. Some of the women fighting for women's liberation are very radical, aren't they? They seem to have lost all their gentleness and femininity. But I think some kind of women's movement is necessary. Unless we speak up for ourselves, nothing will change. In our male-dominated society, even femininity has been defined for us by men. We must decide what femininity is for ourselves.
The liberation of women is not likely to come through social revolution. It may come through social evolution, a slow, Japanese-style consensus-building process that does not disrupt the social harmony or the traditional family too much.
I think that American society today has reached a very dangerous point. The family, as the foundation of society, has broken down. People are living only for themselves. I hope we can find ways for women to play a larger role in society without destroying the family foundation. Men are economic animals fighting for survival in the world of business. Sometimes they behave like merchants of death. They manufacture weapons of war and use these wars to make profits. Men are therefore unreliable, to say the least. Even good men are easily persuaded to fight a war when things go wrong. But we are mothers with breasts made for nurturing the next generation of children. It is our responsibility to hand down a legacy of peace to the children of the 21st century. We women are half the human race, and we must unite with a sense of mission to change the male-dominated world of business and politics.